you said it all, you sent out that card that said back to Hank.
No, I mean, the nuances, I'm sure, are unfamiliar to the majority of voters.
My struggle is always the same one, though. The nuances are not helpful in the discussion. We need to do a better job of presenting the big concept, either in short declarative sentences, a few syllables, rather than I get carried away with these spreadsheets. It's real easy for me to fall into this rabbit hole and get excited about it. Start trying to communicate with the people whose eyes roll back
No, I hate
in their head.
I was just thinking that we have ordered the report coming, we've had some discussion about what should be addressed in it. Perhaps this is a topic which may spread information to a few more heads if it's properly handled.
Well, that's the next thing on our agenda, if we've gotten with the line-by-line thing, is what's going to be in that quarterly report. Are we ready to go there?
Did we decide anything about line by line?
We haven't really dealt with line by line, we've discussed, but we haven't made a decision on how we want to do that.
Who wants to do line by line?
I do every 2 weeks.
Yeah, I mean, let's just let Glenn inform us.
Well, no, I'm trying to put the highlights on these things.
Good suggestion.
So this is
I mean,
where
I think that's something we all should be doing as part of our overview, at least of the areas of our expertise as such. And I mean, I do the same thing, I scan it and we'll ask questions, but I mean, to sit here and kill a whole meeting doing that?
Right.
Well, maybe do you think it would be worthwhile for us to discuss whatever it is that Glenn produces the next time he does it?
Every 2 weeks, you want to give us the Glenn's highlights.
I mean, don't you think we should at least discuss that?
Well, no, I think we should, and then we can look. I mean, I think what would be important, love Glenn as I do, and I love his work, that we still need to make sure that we do the highlighting. You know,
Right.
His highlighting is what he comes up with,
Right.
but somebody else look. Don't trust just his highlighting for what's going to bring our eyes.
Now, there's been a negative number in there for months and it's never gotten addressed. So even if we're doing line by line items, what's being done to correct things?
I think what happened on that negative is because of last year, we, 3/4 of the way through the year is when we shifted health insurance and all that stuff to each thing. And I'm hoping that after the fiscal year ends and the new year starts, that will be zeroed out. I think that somehow numbers aren't going where it was supposed to be going and then coming out. But it's a very small number, so I really...
Yeah, it's only a couple grand.
Yeah.
So Glenn's sort of right about that. After the end of the fiscal year, we huddle with the auditors and stuff is moved into its final home.
Right.
Not actually something we feel like we can even do or should do on our own. Having the supervision of at least one member of the audit team seems to be important. If there's some policy item in question, or if the ones that are really tricky are the ones that are ongoing expenditures, whose accounts aren't zeroed out at the end of each fiscal year. Because we have a fiscal year that's different than a political year, and it's not a great system, but that's what we have. So sometime shortly after December 31st, that stuff, that will freeze into its final position, which will then in turn be audited in a more formal way in April or May or June, and that'll produce a letter that says, no, here's, we can tell they're not stealing the money. We look.
And you actually will see some of those lines change after the first of the year when the auditors start going through, because
that's what I'm going to say.
Right, they'll actually start shifting stuff around in those columns.
To be very clear, though, the bottom line will not change.
Absolutely, yeah.
Unless we completely screw something up, which is always possible. But generally, what the kinds of mistakes we make over and over again are misclassification of expenses, not on the income side, but expenses. We get an invoice from a trucking company, or the phone company is a great example. Here's a single phone bill that really needs to be parsed out between 5 departments. And it needs to be done right, or the books aren't reporting reality. And that's the kind of thing we stumble on time after time. Jimmy doesn't fix it. For the phones. Somebody else had to fix it for electric. But we did actually work on that today. Speaking of line by line. We
General government.
We went through general government and welfare, and we created some new lines, and we moved some stuff into other departments because we think, for instance, the fuel station, which is a big number, $60,000 some years. In one way of thinking, general government uses all the fuel, and there should be only one line, we should put it there. But in fact, if you really want to know what it costs to run the fire department, the ambulance, the highway department, the police department, you gotta know what they're spending on fuel. Doesn't mean you gotta keep track of every gallon that you pump, although we have the technology to do that. Nobody's signed up for that project. But some informed estimate of 90% of the diesel fuel, it's articulated this way, 90% of the diesel fuel goes to highway, 5% to fire, 5% to ambulance.
5% to transfer station.
Oh, that's it. And so the ambulance runs on gasoline.
Right.
And it was police
and
and
so
there was
is
small equipment for
So do the lawnmowers, and so does the police
Tractors.
cars. So I think that's the kind of thing that sort of, that I think moves us forward in terms of capturing real costs. And it's tedious, it's line-by-line work, and it takes usually more than one person looking at it to say, well, that doesn't seem very sensible. And it takes a kind of person who can hear something like that without taking offense and say, okay, well, how about if we... And I think that's the appropriate role for the selectmen, but not all by themselves, if there's anybody willing to revise, which is the situation we have today.
So something like that, let's take David's budget. If you move the fuel station to his budget, it's the same thing that happened. I have to explain to people,
Yes.
like with the healthcare,
Exactly.
that
Did you want it right, or did you want it simple?
absolutely, why did his
We could
budget
just
go
give
up
you one
20%?
number at the
You
end
know,
of the year.
so that's what's gonna happen.
Yes.
How about we just give you one number at the end of the year?
Okay.
No warrant article, no A through Z on the budget, just a number.
Just a number.
Are you looking at splitting out large line items for 2017 or 2016?
16.
And Kelly split out, because it was requested, the friendly meals insurance, propane, electricity, and oil, those are different.
Just from a structural point of view, these kinds of decisions need to be made in the fiscal year before the recording starts. When you get the mid-year stumbles that are really hard to explain, or maybe impossible. So our goal in making these changes today was not to change the bookkeeping for this fiscal, it's for the next fiscal.
To create new lines, January 1st, we'll start using it.
But it does mean that the budget that we will evaluate at the hearing will look weird again. But I'm fully capable of standing up and saying, this is what we did. We moved the fuel over here, because this is where the fuel gets used. You okay with that? Or we can put it back if that's what you want, but
The same is going to happen with the communication line. And we're adding an events line, which now goes under GG supplies, but it's not a supply if we have an Easter egg hunt or whatever. So we're adding a line for that. Does the other taxpayer want to pay for Christmas tree lighting and whatever? That was basically it, wasn't it?
Those were the main things.
that was it. I took so long.
I know, really, well, because we went line by line.
I mean, there's numbers jiggled up and down.
And the general government sort of just kind of like a little slush thing. I mean, it's like, we'll just throw it in there.
No, that's historically, you're absolutely right.
Right. And we're gonna move the library stuff over to library.
Right.
Surprise, surprise. So the general government budget, as it looks, is going down quite a bit, but that's not because it actually is going down. We did take it down a little bit. There were a few things that estimates that we dropped. I don't think we went up in anything. I mean, I don't know how line by line one wants to go.
We didn't go up in anything, we made some things smaller. We suggested some more radical changes, which I would love to hear people comment on. The biggest one I'm quite sure that we discussed was the fuel. You know, 2013, we spent probably 99% of $60,000 on fuel for town operations. This year, we're 10.1 months through the year, and we've spent $25,000.
We talked about general government buildings a lot to get that
Fuel
fuel
cheap
cheap.
this year.
Right, so my question is always roughly the same one. What should the number be for next year? realize that that's not fair, but I have to answer that question.
Maybe we should track gallons.
We do.
There you go.
That
But that
is,
doesn't tell me
Last year.
what diesel fuel's gonna cost in July.
But it would help you a lot. I mean, you can get predictions.
So what number should I use? Are the Red Sox gonna do better? It's the same kind of question.
It's all my numbers. Okay.
So, we didn't reach a consensus on that, but I predict that we will drive that number down quite a bit over the objections of some people.
So I guesstimated about 30 grand for the year.
And I'd say we're, with the exception of the volatility of fuel oil, use, not cost, because we know the cost, because we buy it free. We buy it from the district, so we know what the cost is going to be. But the use, we can't predict very much, because like snow plowing, it's linked to degree days.
But we were having a pretty rough spring, so that kind of made me look at that, those numbers.
Where's the numbers for heat come in? I mean, in all seriousness, I mean, we got the door open in here. It was 77 in here on Monday. It's like, you know,
it's
We
not
have-
every time you get in here, it's hot.
what is the thermostat set at?
We talked about programming.
There's another one in the other part of the building, that was the one that read 77 the other day. This is set at 68, it reads 70.
Right, so the body heat is going to pull that up.
There wasn't a lot of body heat the other day.
No, but, right,
This was the middle of the afternoon.
I think they were looking at the heating and air conditioning system in here because it's not,
We did spend a fair amount of money 3 years ago on an audit for this building, and it came up with a list of fairly expensive stuff to do, and most of it had to do with the controls, and some of it had to do with insulation, and we put it aside for a while, because we didn't feel like it was going to go anywhere in those years when every dime mattered.
Is it still aside now, or is it?
Well, the champion of that program, bless his heart, is John Mann. And he did a great job of finding us the right consultant, I think. Certainly the advice that she gave us in detail in the library has paid dividends. We can track the value of that advice in terms of fuel use. So, but I don't know that we talked about it at the select board level, but it's absolutely worth doing to spend money on energy efficiency, especially in this climate. I mean, in this geographical climate. It's sort of less urgent than it was when fuel oil was $4.
but it will be again.
We have money in for building maintenance, and here we go again, as Glenn says, we don't maintain them. Why do we have building maintenance money if we're not gonna use that?
Can we talk about that?
And we talked about that today to make sure that the monies that have not been spent do get spent, and they did have, the selectmen have a couple priorities on spending down that line item, which is,
Well, my priority is not actually to spend down that line, but to get the work done.
right, exactly. But that was, the fund. It was $10,000 for work.
They just have so much to do. And they can't handle it.
Am I gonna regret putting my
Yeah,
jacket?
no, they need to make sure that those monies are, work is done for the monies that have
So you
been.
sit at a meeting like that, and there's always at least two approaches to that line. Somebody says, well, you're not spending the money anyway, so why don't we set that line to zero? And another person says, no, what's the matter with you? We're not taking care of what we own, it's just gonna be more expensive to fix it 2 years from now if we don't fix it now.
What are we gonna do to help the selectmen, because they're obviously cannot do everything that needs to be done.
Get new selectmen.
Another
That's what I
selectman.
recommend.
What sort?
That's not how that works.
Not administrator.
Or whatever. That's gonna be a circular conversation, and the agenda is
Moving on.
not moving on.
Just one other clarification, because, I don't know, general government's been having it, I don't know if it's come up in here. And that was, why is a treasurer's postage line there at zero, when we know that things have to be sent out? And the answer is that the postage is basically under the supplies, because they're stamped envelopes, so if you put them under the envelope.
So we're wrapping it all
Or you
together.
put them under the postage line.
I
So
didn't find anybody who was willing to split it.
Right, so just as a clarification, we chose to put it under supplies, leave it under supplies, and understand why there's a zero there. So, yes, occasionally things get stamped, sent out without,
Without stamps.
no, without stamps, but occasionally he does pick up extra stamps from the, town office supplies, but for the most part, it's a pre-stamped.
Was there anything else to know about the phone bill business?
The phone bill, well, my name's not on it yet, so there's a lot I can't.
Why is that?
Well, because, maybe today I finally got the answer as to who actually can put my name on. It's sort of been tossed around, but different people have that ability, and they don't. So it appears that Marcello is the only person who can add my name. Having said that, there are still questions about who some of these people are. And is the new chief taking over the part-time phone that is not being used now, which is not a data phone, but is actually, will be going to a data phone. And that's going to increase the cost by $25.
Wouldn't the new chief take over the phone that Marcello has?
Because Marcello uses his own phone, and that is the one he's been using, but he doesn't use it.
It just requires more study.
Well, that's it. But the new policeman will. The new policeman will. So this is an old plan that the phones are on. They are a problem that with one of these phones that is not being used is it costs about $30 a month to have the phone. To not have the phone, we have to buy out the contract. So at this point, the $30 a month is cheaper until that phone contract is up, and then we can drop it.
And which group is this under?
That's under the K-9 officer, for instance.
Dog ate my trouble.
I have a question on the tablet that was for emergency management and whether Chris is going to actually be using it. Right now, we're paying for a tablet that no data is being used on. And then another question is some of this data, how much of it, and I've got to speak to each of these people individually, how much of this data is town business, and are any of them using for personal stuff? I'm not going to question the policeman's use of data, because I suspect they have to use it all the time on the road.
They have a computer in the car?
Do they have a computer in the car?
I thought they did. They had a laptop book.
Okay,
Or the equivalent of that.
okay.
Does the computer have its own cellular service? Do we know that?
Because where are we paying for that if it does?
I don't know. But it's got to have some kind of communication, you would think, because I would hope they're using it for more than just doing reports.
That's
I'll
the
ask-
thing
I will ask
we're
that
raising,
question.
aren't we?
Yes.
That's the,
Right.
that's the thing we're paying, $600,
$900.
$900 a year for.
Okay, and then, what is the data that is being used? I mean, and I'm saying this because can we go to a lower data usage plan?
Does everybody that have a phone really need data? Or can their data be blocked off some of them?
Well, that's really what I'm looking at here. For the most part, the only people using data are David, very little. I would expect him to be using more, except that he may be anti-smartphones. Roger's using a lot of data. Tim is using a lot of data. And Mike is using a lot of data. Now, I'm just not sure why.
How much are we talking about when we say a lot?
Oh, we're not talking huge amounts, but I'm just,
Relatively a lot.
well, we can't go under a 2 gig plan right now, which is not a lot of data, except what is it being used for?
Right.
It can be using on Wi-Fi, which we're also paying for.
How many phones we have?
We have, well, this one I think is actually gone. It's on the list, but there's no cost to it. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, plus a tablet. Some of those are not smartphones. Some of those are, we've got 1, 2, 3, we have 4 dumb phones. So we have 4 smartphones and a tablet. So the tablet is not used any data, so that's what my question. Does Chris need this, or is this something that, I mean, he has to, I think he may have to have it. This is the emergency management.
Could well be, but I think it's a question of easy to answer.
Right, once he's taken over. So that's,
My recollection is the thing about the computer and tablet
One
Right.
and the phone.
For incoming.
The sat,
right, but they can buy it, but then who is paying for the data?
the sat phone, but, once he takes it over, he has taken it over, hasn't he?
It's true.
So until I get my name on the account, USL will not actually talk to me about specifics.
So,
Texting Marcello is the answer.
for who, for Joel or the select board to text him, or for you to text him? Or
Well,
who's gonna do that?
the question, I mean, I can text him, was he here at the meeting when that motion was made, or had he left? So does he know that the motion was there,
Remember.
which would be a matter
I
of,
don't think he was there.
you think he'd left by then?
I know Roger was there, Roger left, and he didn't know about it, and I don't think Marcello was there.
Well, Marcello was sitting right there,
He might have left.
but he may have left when this motion was made. So it may be that I will try it, and then he can check in with the selectmen to see if it's real.
Okay.
Or the selectmen can just text him, which is what he's doing, to say this is real. So he's on his little tablet as we speak.
I'm curious, do we know, as far as, we have US Cellular, correct?
Correct.
Do we know what their plan options are, assuming that we could cut some of the data down? Do they even have a plan that we could move to?
They have a one,
Save us? They do have
we,
a plan.
that's what this is an old plan that they're on, and sometimes it's much better to stay on your grandfathered plans.
Right, yeah.
Because we're paying extra for text and picturing. You know, we have the small plan, we have the unlimited plan for Roger.
Yeah.
All the new plans, of course, have those, are part of,
Right, yeah.
just part of the plan. But even so, the old plans can still be better.
Right, yeah.
So until I get these couple of questions answered, which I could not get answered, the people that I was talking to still had questions about them, so I'm going to have to go to each department. Then we can go to, then I can ask about this 1 gig plan, depending on what this usage is for.
Right.
And whether or not a whole lot of that can't be done on Wi-Fi. As I say, I'm not going to question how our police department is using their data, because they're out and around.
A lot of times with the smartphones, you can set them up as soon as it hits the Wi-Fi, it'll go onto the Wi-Fi. If you're using it for that, like all my phones are set up so that as soon as I hit Wi-Fi, I'm on it, I'm off of data to keep my data down.
Right, and you can just plain turn your data off.
I keep my data.
Yeah, you can turn your data off and only turn it on as you need it, so it's not constantly trying to.
Maybe just a matter of
To
the
load.
phones aren't configured properly. They might
Right.
not even be getting on the Wi-Fi when they're here.
So you will take care of
I'm
getting
continuing to work on this.
on this, okay, thank you. Can we move on to the quarterly report and the relevant information from the select board and the DRA? That's gonna be incorporated in.
Well, by the time you get your report out, we will already have done whatever we decided to do. So I think it would be a mistake for your quarterly report to ask for public input on setting the tax rate for December and June.
But it would probably be good for us to explain what you folks have decided to do.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And-
Sam always picks it up, so.
And the you folks is, I hope, as many people as I can cram into this room.
Do you have a date for that now?
Tomorrow, Tuesday next.
Tuesday.
That's when the DRI guys can do.
They don't send people anymore, it's all software. We have to decide, the select board, this is a weird statutory requirement on the part of the select board. Nobody else gets to make this decision. The voters' concerns are not in the room unless I figure out how to get in the room. We have to decide what to do with fund balance, including nothing. And there are strongly held opinions in our community about both polar, both ends of the continuum, doing nothing and doing everything. And historically, we have done both. And when I say both, I mean we retained some money to potentially fund warrant articles in the follow-on budget and spend some to stabilize or lower the tax rate.
Technically, this tax rate is stabilized already.
Only on paper.
Yeah.
It's just long division at this point. But somebody has to make that decision, and it falls to the select. And until that decision is made, the default condition that comes to us from Concord is to retain 100% of the fund balance.
Right, but what I'm trying to say
Going
is,
forward.
the tax rate that you have now, the 26.53, is stable, the taxes. So,
We have
when I
to
look
set,
at taxes that, exactly, so if you leave it alone, would the taxes go up or go down?
they'll roughly remain the same because the amount of money we're going to raise under this current budget is within $40,000 of what we raised
Under
last year.
my definition of stable, I call that stable, and stuff stays the same. So if you drive the price down, drive the rate down, then you set yourself up for the following year of not having a stable.
I am intimately familiar with your position on this. It's very well articulated. It's widely shared, but it is far from the only one.
Absolutely.
Glenn's position is, and I support it, is that we should be saving money forward for both anticipated and unanticipated expenses. Other taxpayers take the other rule, which is to say, that's all my money and I want 100% of that money back. And you keep in the bank, in the checking account only the statutory minimum. Both of those positions are well represented and well articulated. It's the selectman's job to cut that baby in half. Really?
Well, I mean, the warrant articles are going to make all the difference in the world as to where things go for next year. So,
Absolutely.
right, so that if we're really talking stabilization,
Well, let's remember where we are on the calendar. We're talking about the tax bill you get December and June. The warrant articles that we pass or fail to fund in March won't kick in until the following December.
correct.
So you either use short-term planning or long-term planning.
And I look to you for your recommendations. I've already gotten your recommendations.
Anytime.
So, many times, it has never changed. It's okay.
But I think most people, well,
You're not gonna get away with that.
okay. I mean, in your own home, don't you look, you look for it, you know, you don't spend everything you have. You put money aside.
A lot of people put the paycheck in.
I know they might think that. That's not the way I was raised.
So,
No.
let's make an appeal to the public, as you have, to get here next Tuesday night for the select board meeting and be part of this process.
And then I think it's the job of
And
the
then-
quarterly report.
And then the quarterly report will know what's happened and make the next
Variety as possible.
Right.
That's the best we
And
can
that
do.
sets the stage for the budget hearing and the first session, because at that point, you're gonna say, this is how much money we have from fund balance. Should we choose to use any of it to underwrite the cost of these warrant articles for things that we wanna do? And this is how much money we have from standing capital reserve funds for the same cost. And do we wanna mix, do we wanna match, do we wanna leave this capital reserve fund alone for a couple of years? It's all up to the voters. But everyone in this room has a chance to say, here's what I think we should do. I think you should put that to a vote. Is there anybody here unclear about Glenn's position on this?
No, but I support Glenn's position.
I do too.
That's not the question.
You said you wanted to hear from all of us, right?
Almost all of it.
I support Glenn's decision too.
What's Glenn,
Without knowing, without knowing,
Right there.
excuse me, without knowing what the numbers are.
what's Glenn's position? To clarify.
I like steadiness. I don't like the up and down, I like the even.
What numbers are you referring to?
We've got $726,074
Yeah, which is group those we have.
in unencumbered fund balance to it.
Correct.
That's less than we had last year, more than we had in the two previous years by a lot, and more than twice what we had in 2011. So whatever we're doing, we're not being consistent with how we manage the fund balance.
We should just sell more stuff, because that goes in this whole bunch.
It's all for sale.
The whole $500, that really helps.
Well, no, we're 10 grand, because
And, you know, for further context, in 2012, we spent $115,000 of that to underwrite warrant articles. Last year, we spent $365,000 to underwrite warrant articles. And we still haven't spent down fund balance to anything remotely like the statutory minimum, which is around $250,000. And if you add that to what will turn out to be another year of, we didn't quite spend as much as we could have, and we probably took in a little more than we planned on, that number could grow by $150,000 without us doing anything about it. So one school would simply say, let's use that fund balance and try to push it down towards the statutory minimum, which has worked for us for 15 years or so without emergencies. And let's try to figure it. Then the question is, so how do you want to use it? There's only two choices. Potentially funding warrant articles for the next year, or driving down the tax rate for December.
Or you can apply it to next year's budget.
That's what drives it.
Yeah, the voters.
The voters
Not-
could-
Not the warrant articles, but the actual budget, because the voters can actually take that money out and apply it to the budget next year.
Why don't you use the argument that the evaluations went down on average 8%? You try to stabilize the tax bills rather than the tax rate.
Bills are.
No, it was the already
The bills will be stable if we don't do anything.
Correct.
Okay, so in other words, the increase from 23.8 or 9 to 26.53,
My tax bill went up $45 from last year to this year.
That's as good as it's gonna get.
Right.
I call that pretty stable.
That's
Yeah.
always.
And that would be true for most of the people in the community,
Right.
not the ones,
Now, getting
not
to
the
the
ones who
point,
burned off part of their house or added a wing or put in a fancy new porch. I'm looking at you, sir. Sending the assessor to your house, that's a really nice porch.
did I just get at the point which should be emphasized within our quarterly report?
That would be helpful.
All right, do you want to start drafting something, Sam, or you?
Give me a time. What do you want to draft?
It would be best for the town if that document showed up before the budget hearing,
Exactly.
January.
I think I would wait until after next Tuesday's meeting, when the select board has made their decision on what they're going to fund balance.
Is there two other
starting writing something out of speculation. I can start on it next week.
Okay, great. Thank you. Moving along. EMSG and so on.
The subcommittee of the EMSG that was working on a truck spec completed it last week, and it went out in the mail on Tuesday morning to 7 vendors for quotes. And we've asked them to notify us by, I want to say the 20th or the 22nd of their intent to bid, and then the bids are due back on the 4th of January, I believe. So, got a lot done there. And I had a question for you on that, because when I got back from Connecticut yesterday, I listened to part of the selectors meeting, and you were talking about used trucks, but I didn't catch all of what you were talking about.
The spec is voluminous. It's really quite a piece of work. It's very specific, right down to the covers on the wheel nuts. And, well, more importantly, the engine, the transmission.
There's a caveat right in the front that says if you're not going to use this, please explain why, and you feel free.
So that was a key element for some of the select board was that there was an equivalency clause.
There was.
Yeah, and so we talked about that. And then we said, nothing in this would prevent us from electing to choose an appropriate use piece of equipment that met something like these specs. That's all we wanted to know. That's all we needed to assure each other of. We didn't want to find ourselves taking advantage of what clearly is a ton of work and inadvertently allowing that to box us into. And you made sure that we didn't do that to ourselves, and we're grateful.
Yeah, we made
Even
sure
though
that
that's a politically touchy subject.
we made sure that there was, otherwise you couldn't quote multiple, go out to multiple companies for bid. And so we've done that. We also left it as such that the option was there that we didn't have to accept the lowest bid too. So,
That's correct.
but I think it goes back to how we wrote the warrant article in terms of what we see in terms of the.
And we discussed that, and I think this group has as well, based on what we learned about the debacle with the police car. We're going to write the warrant article that says, up to X amount of money.
Yeah.
Give the voters that control. But then we're going to be kind of deliberately vague about year, make, model, color. I'm interested in functionality. Much more, a device to do these things that will cost no more than this much. That's as far as I want to go.
And that's one of the issues with buying used is it's a function of what's on the used truck lot at the time, and also trying to figure out how much it's going to cost to refurbish it, because they're not all in necessarily the best of shape. So there's a lot of things at play, but we tried to do it as best as possible, and that's what I wanted to hear, that you were content with it. We had left it as such that there was room to manipulate there. So I think that's the case. We will be moving on to try to put
You came back from Connecticut and turned on the selectmen's meeting?
no, I actually was checking my email while I was on it listening to it. Yeah, you're right. But the next step will be to put together the I don't want to say arguments, the points as to why the town needs it needs a truck to replace, trucks. So, selling points, basically.
Yeah.
So we'll be working on that, and also looking at our next meeting, which is the 12th, in terms of establishing where else we need to go, in terms of wrapping up things with the fire department and then moving on to the ambulance. So, before I go on to a couple other things, police chief progress, I think that's in the select board's court, so maybe you can address that point.
I have nothing to report at this time.
I just have a question that I thought of, going to Glenn's level of selling things. Can we sell the old fire trucks that we're replacing the?
Glenn would be happy to do it.
You don't get a lot of money for them, but yes, you can sell them.
There are people that collect for one of the parts or something, so.
That was old enough, it might be a collector.
Yeah.
Actually,
For a while, and then it'll be collectible.
the old rescue truck is actually bring more money because of the vintage of it.
I think they were talking about actually keeping one of the trucks.
Oh, my Lord.
No, not the use, but
For parades.
no,
If you need
there's
the
something
old
they thought they could do with the rescue truck, I think, that, for hauling things around or something. The pumper obviously is another story, so, but we did, believe it or not, hold on to your seats, get somebody to come out and look at the door. So I'm waiting on a quote for that, so somebody actually finally came and looked at it, so that's helpful, and they impressed me with their attention to detail, so. There are a couple of things that concern me in terms of EMSG, well, a few things. One, Matt Saxon has said he's going to step away from working with us, and I did shoot him back an email asking him to please reconsider and at least hang on through the budget process, whether or not he will or not, I don't know. I don't know where you're going to fit in if you're doing all this other stuff, so I'm concerned that the EMSG may be slowly withering away. In terms of the budgets that we overlook, I'm pretty comfortable with what the ambulances presented. The fire department, I know, has to go through another go-round. The police department budget, I got the impression that the selectmen were okay with it, but I'm not sure that was the right impression.
No, I don't think that's the right impression. I think you'll see some significant modifications when it comes back to us.
Okay, I think
that?
Right now. But you probably won't get to see them until January, unless we move a little faster than we have been. Because there's a lot of pieces in play over there.
Right, I think the police department budget's going to be in flux for a while, is that?
Yes, and so part of my job is just to make sure it's big enough to accommodate the different directions we might find ourselves being forced or asked to go in for 2016.
Emergency management, has that been presented yet for go-round one?
No.
Okay, that's what I thought. I know we did sit down back in September. Is that when it was? A couple of bonding, Priscilla, Chris, and I, and kind of hashed it out, but I'm not sure where it went, so, okay.
I suspect that one will not get a lot of attention, just because of the circumstances of the emergency management director, and that we will put some placeholders in there and carry forward without any radical change.
And that will get shared with the public when? Because, I mean, there were some changes that were made to it, and again, before the emergency management director was as busy as he is. And so I'm wondering who's going to make those placeholders, or if that's
It's going to have to be us.
Okay, you want me to get to you what we had marked up?
Any recommendations you have will always be there, and we're inclined to accept them without argument. Because we believe in the committee structure being the tool that allows other minds to come to bear on topics that we fail to pay enough attention to.
The other thing with emergency management was that I was under the impression that the plans, at least one of the plans was either overdue or due for update this year. What's moving along with that?
There is a grant process that has been begun that, if it's successful, requires a line in the budget, and it's $6,000. The select board authorized the emergency management director to proceed with that application, knowing that what we were actually being asked to do was to complete a FEMA-based obligation for essentially hazard mitigation planning, or reviewing the town's hazard mitigation plan on a 5-year cycle, which it changed. But we need to do that in order to make, well, hazard mitigation plan is a good idea anyway. Generally, people in this town believe in it, having had that experience this year. But also, it's a gateway for future grants. So the second question they ask you on the grant after what's your zip code is your hazard mitigation plan current? And if not, you can just stop filling out this piece of paper. That's historically how that's worked. The timelines have changed a little bit, but we're still within striking distance of doing that. And we were smart enough to figure out that, boy, we don't have time to do this ourselves, and here's this grant that will pay Southwest to do it. So that's where we are.
Okay.
I want to skip over DPW at the moment because
One quick question on the warrant article for the fire truck we discussed, I think last week, about possibly not able to get it completed in the current next fiscal year, writing the warrant for 2 years. I think you were going to check in.
I did get legal advice on that. The lady said, don't worry about it. As long as you got an invoice at the end of the year, you'll be fine.
So as long as it's under contract, technically.
You don't even have to pay the full invoice, and I wouldn't, and actually delivery of the equipment. Just don't worry about it. We didn't have this road before. There's, again, it's that little reconciliation in January and then the reboot in May. The auditors just make all that stuff balance out, so that some of that money that actually gets spent in 17 winds up on the 16 books anyway.
We
Magic.
did 2 things pertinent to that. We put in a clause that said that they were probably, I forget what the wording was about, possibly having a bond to cover their manufacturer so that if the company defaulted, that we were covered monetarily. We also asked for them to put in, because we knew one of the vendors, if you put down 50% up front, I believe, they typically knock 3 to 5% off the price. So we specified, we wanted to know any kind of like budget payment type things that, would come into play with that, to knocking the price down too, so.
And the political advice on the bonding was for a purchase of this size bonding would be prudent to require.
Yeah.
So there wasn't any ambiguity about that.
Yeah, when American La France went under, there were about 17 communities that got screwed, basically, so. They had trucks in progress, and they lost everything, so.
I'm not even sure I told her what the industry was. I think I just said this is how big the number is. Which is good to know.
So let's move to the Financial Planning Tools Subcommittee, and hopefully give you a chance to share what you've been able to do.
Yeah, so I've drafted some reports that need maybe 5% more cleanup, so I should get those out by Friday this week. Nothing's going to happen tomorrow. So those will be in everybody's inbox. I've operated under the assumption that we're still building budgets on a total year basis, not on a monthly basis. Is that a right assumption to make? Okay. So basically it's summarized by account and it's summarized by department. A couple different formats. One would be a monthly reporting format, something that we would get updated actuals every month. And it would show us a percent of budget that's been used, year-to-date percent of budget for each department. One of the formats that I had come up with before, I think would be viable out of MuniSmart. One of the formats I had from before, I don't think is possible out of a relational database. So what I propose is I'll shoot those out this week. People can take a look at it. We can talk about it next week. We can fine-tune the reports, and whatever we decide to move forward with from there, we contact MuniSmart and have a discussion around getting an estimate to either train somebody to build these reports or just hire them to build them for us. And we can probably give us a quote on both of those types of things. It's an hourly rate is what it comes down to. So it's just hiring a contractor to some degree.
So we'll find out if MuniSmart can handle this or not.
Yeah, I'm not designing anything that a relational database shouldn't be able to. The reporting capabilities out of MuniSmart are pretty limited as we've seen. So they won't be pretty reports. I'd be just as interested in getting the information dumped into a big spreadsheet as well. So, okay, next steps.
Thank you. We are past time. We have a couple other things that we haven't considered yet. You want to keep going, or do you want to put them on here? Okay. Anything from the DPW that we need to talk about tonight?
Right now, we kind of went over what we did last week, but
Yeah.
nothing really
All right.
pressing, I guess.
Uh,
You got a question? Oh,
In terms of the
Being quiet so I can go home.
okay.
the punch list, I guess the first question is, has it gotten posted on the town website?
Exactly.
Thanks for Priscilla.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Thank you, Priscilla. And we had thanks to Priscilla in here for something else too.
The HR
Dealing with the HR
report.
stuff.
And she also posted the information about the fire truck, so that if anybody happens to be
Yeah, I saw
scanning things,
Yeah.
that's there too, so.
So, I don't know if all of you are subscribed to that website. If you are, you will get alerts about these documents being posted and other announcements made by other people.
That's actually pretty handy.
So, if you want to know how to do that, you haven't done that, you can talk with me after the meeting. But I'm not going to send things out to this committee because I assume you all are subscribed.
Any more more discussion on the punch list?
I'd like to know when things are gonna be prioritized on that.
Seriously, punch.
Things are gonna be punched.
We keep adding and adding, but it doesn't seem to go down.
It's probably not gonna change at all if the budget season's over.
Didn't you make a statement at a selectmen's meeting a month or so ago or longer that you would address a bunch of that stuff before the end of the year?
Well, I'm certainly thinking about it, and so far, that's as far as I'm willing to go.
In the same token, I have a question for you. I noticed on Facebook that Connecticut Valley Crime Stoppers is meeting in Alstead at 15 Mechanic Street at 6 o'clock on Tuesday, the 17th or something, whatever the Tuesday is after next. 17th. And is that with the select board or something downstairs?
No. They seem fairly autonomous. Yeah. I think a pretty good board. Don't know what the topic of this meeting is, but often
Looking for volunteers.
they are looking for help and also trying to figure out if anything they have is worthy of financial reward. It's not decisions to select them, but them to be involved.
No, I was more curious if they were meeting here, that it was another like add-on to a selectmen's meeting that would keep you guys from addressing the regular stuff. So.
There's always that opportunity. Next week we are going to hear from the Conservation Commission. At 6. And we do have a non-public scheduled at the end of that meeting, so it's going to be a mess to get through everything we want to do, but that may provide us with just the kind of data that we need to not repeat ourselves and argue in circles about stuff. My job is to communicate these principles as clearly as possible and try to figure out the sense of the room.
Does the select board have any kind of an obligation under an RSA to post their agenda in advance?
Not that I'm aware of. We do post it in advance, but it doesn't do you much good because it only gets this far. If it were, but this starts out as an electronic document at my house some days before, and if it's important to this group or any other group to see that document the day that I release it, I'd be happy to ship it anywhere in the world.
You couldn't post it.
I could.
Then we'd all get it.
Would that please you?
Yes.
Ah.
I think it would be good.
Absolutely.
Any other old business? I don't think we want to list the potential warrant articles. I just,
Yeah, wait till see what happens.
Actually, one discussion could drive the other instead of, instead of going this way, we could go that way.
Yeah,
What do we want to do next year?
yeah.
Therefore, how much money do we want to move around? I don't want to enter into that discussion tonight, God knows, but I think it's an interesting idea. And you have been diligent about publishing ideas for the warrant articles.
Unfortunately, I'm not going to be in 2 meetings.
I said, someone will work for saying that opinion. Well, maybe we should just give you the fun balance.
That's not how much it would cost.
all right, any new business? Comments, Barb? Michael? Any comments? Anything further, Joel?
I talk way too much.
I guess the only thing I have is, sorry, Jeff, but when are we going to start seeing more numbers on this?
What is that?
Next year's budget.
It's
Starting early.
It's coming here
It's
in
November.
Well, we did some of it today, so
Okay.
and she was gonna email it to me, I didn't check my, if I get them, it doesn't look like
Then
today.
we brought it up, Gloria, or?
Yes, Linda is part of Gloria, and we didn't hear from Gloria today.
The default condition in the selectman's office is that when we need those numbers to fill in those blanks and the department head hasn't presented the numbers, last year's numbers go in. Or if we make it smaller, depending on how we're feeling.
Was there a schedule for this? It seems to have fallen apart. This was regular meetings with that people.
It's true. There is a schedule that is falling apart and there's a lot of stuff going on.
So
We will eventually do it all. The schedule of our performance will satisfy no one, not even ourselves.
It'd be nice to know when those things were, so we knew if we needed to be there for our specific areas.
I have nothing scheduled going forward at this moment.
But you will post the agendas on the website.
That's what it says here in my note.
Jonathan managed the lovely calendar, and we need to follow it.
Are you too late for that?
Well, he made it a while ago.
That's what I mean.
We've
We've already missed some of them.
Well, I know, and he worked so hard.
Thanks, Jonathan.
Priscilla?
I have notes from the last two meetings, and I don't know if I should just post them. They haven't been approved. We didn't have a quorum at last
We
meeting.
didn't have a quorum,
So
so we,
I took notes the entire meeting, and I thought, well, that was a total waste of time. Because
no, I think that you should post them as notes of a meeting that
No one
was
attended.
not an official, was not an official, these are not official minutes because we didn't have a quorum, but these are the notes of what we talked about.
Or you could just call them what you missed, since there weren't that many people there. Don't panic, this is what you missed.
We have a lot of.
So, I don't know, that's what I think.
That is good.
What about the meetings, sorry about this, but what about the meeting minutes from the September 21st meeting, when we did have a quorum?
They were probably fine.
And so
Everybody said
can we
that.
say, yes, they're fine, and I'll post them. Those are approved, the others are unofficial.
Do we need a show of hands?
If you're not okay with this, let me know.
I'm fine.
Time's up.
This hour.
The meeting before last.
14th.
There's a thing.
Anything else we need to cover?
You got action items?
Motion to adjourn?
Those people are standing up.
Yeah, let's vote on the motion before we fill out our form.
How about going over the action items?
Want to do that, Priscilla?
The action items from last week,
No, for now, tonight.
Jill is going to post the select board agendas.
Chris is going to send out the agenda early.
Jonathan is going to send out the new report formats. Carol's going to do a bunch of things. Carol's going to forward notes about the emergency management budget to Joel. Sam is going to start a draft after the select board meeting. Julie's going to continue looking into stuff.
And Priscilla's going to create a
Oh,
committee
yeah.
about the
Yeah,
town administrator.
right.
Thank you, Priscilla.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right.
All right,
See you next week.
thank you.
Thanks.
Thank you, Joel.
Okay, Bill, finally gets to go home.
No, I mean.
Okay, thank you, right?